hear about you, it's all about projects here, projects there. You just got bugged out of the same old pen and paper stuff, and now you brought an digitalization to that. So, it's still the set of code which is already available somewhere down the line. Like everybody uses Stack Overflow, GitHub for sure, to some extent. So, what was your journey when you started that one line of code? Like that blank cursor which is there on that first line of the editor, what is the journey all about? And to me, I would love to start from your journey as a student, journey as a professional. Like how did that journey pave you? Like being a student is something which is phenomenal. Like it just drives you to be that next professional. So what was your journey as a student, and how did it pave your way as a professional today?
Well, I had a very typical Indian student portfolio. Like, when I was like 8th standard, I was on 8th standard when I first get to know about what is a computer is, what is a program, or how you even make a program run in a computer. I basically fell in love with all these digital pixels that that move around in a computer screen, and I was actually curious about how it got there. Like if I saw a fish moving in a screen, I always think that how come a fish can move in a screen in all these digital pixels. So yeah, I would say I was on 8th standard when I first met a personal computer in real life. And the first program that I wrote was actually on it was a web page, and it was on HTML. So that's not a programming language, instead of scripting language. But again, it kind of gave me this confident boost to write application that will render in a monitor, and users can get a hold on what we are tend to do, share information, communicate with your peers, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that the first program that I wrote was a website for my school when I was on 8th standard. It didn't end well, I guess. Like I was not able to complete fully, but again, I got a lot of confidence from that minor project, which again, it was compelled from my teachers to work on it. And I was part of a IT club in my school, and which again related to the project that we was working on. So yeah, that was the first single line of code that I wrote, my school's website. Yeah.
That really paves you the way, right? It's always that one big thing, like, okay, I saw that blank cursor at one point of time, and I filled it, and that satisfaction is so good. And also the reality of open source contribution. What is it all about when we are speaking about the reality of working behind such kind of an code base? It's huge, and it's really huge. And what is it all about when we think of an influence today, when it's a data hungry world, gathering a lot of information in terms of code, in terms of data here and there? So what is the influence of open source, and what really is the factor that really drives an open source project to a next level?
Got it. So I believe that for every company, for every tech company that we have at the moment, they are basically 90% open source projects. Like they either use their internal libraries made from an open source project, or a set of open source project, or even they are one of the core contributors to some of the open source project that they use it within their company. And as you said, it's true that it's a data hungry world, and everyone is scared about their privacy and how the data is being dealt within a company or a project. That is pretty much very close to us, as such as in our smartphone or our personal computer and all. So the entire idea behind open sourcing, or relying on open source libraries, is that you can make sure that it's how it's being dealt with. Like we have 100% transparency when its source code is open. Like developers or the end users can actually watch how your data is being dealt within an application. And it's not just a friend, but actually you can see how the data is being transferred through APIs, how it is being consumed in the backend, how it's, how it's being communicated with the end world, either it's being encrypted or not, or it's in just in a plain text or not. So I would say the best thing that can happen to your privacy and confidentiality is the emerging boost on the open source era. And yeah, it's quite evident that a lot of companies are turning open source nowadays, because that kind of resonates with the company's values on privacy and all. So I would totally advocate on that. And being the founder of Hopscotch, we always has been an open source company from day one onwards. We make sure that the data that we are being dealt with is secured, and it's not something that anyone can take a peek into and all. And yeah, that's again one of the reasons why we are getting a lot of popularity in the open source community especially. So yeah, that's my take on that. It's really on the privacy and the confidentiality of the data that we share with the tech company.
Yeah, most of the time when I think of some sort of a project which is there, I think of like, how do people advocate it? Like, it's just an out of the box question that I had from the question bank, but like, it's like, what do you feel about the way we are advocating open source? Because I feel that, open source is one of an opportunity to some guys to get inside FANG, because that's what is the trend today. Mostly it's all about like open source contribution is that sort of a brand that you need to build up. Like, it's something like,
Yeah.
it's some people have that misconception. Community is equal to market. It's not that. Community is equal to the brand. Like, how well have you reached out to the people, and how well are people coming back to you? When I think of GitLab recently went public, and GitLab has an amazing story to say. It has 22,000 plus developers out there who are open source contributors there. They have their own set of compliance, governance, policy in line, but like the way in which they advocate is different. So what is it all about when we are advocating in the world of open source? Like, open source need not have to be open source. Like, any person can come and advocate that kind of a technology, or else an institution can be built it. So what's the most effective way in advocating an open source, and as well as what do you feel about the way in which we are advocating open source today?
I would say in India, especially in India, we have seen the both ends of the spectrum. Like I have seen developers who would who would love to participate in communities such as Hacker Earth. We have festivals such as hackathons and a lot of other stuffs that totally resonates with the open source culture. And they are enthusiastically actively being in open source projects as well. But on the other side, I have seen companies and startups making an open source friend as a banner, and converting that to a go to market strategy, or some gimmicks to onboard hire talented peoples to the team and that kind of stuff. So I have seen in India the both ends of the spectrum. But again, it's totally up to them to utilize the resource. Like open source is a it's actually a it's actually a wide bright bubble of enthusiastically curious developers. It's a community of developers like us to really want to see a change in the world. And GitLab is a wonderful explanation. Like it's not just a regular company to get into IPO. And since it's an open source project, there are like tens of thousands of contributors are working on it. It together brings a change in the way the companies work. Like, this is not something that we could have watched 10 or 15 years ago. Like this is something very new. A lot of companies are going open first. And in such a time where the work from home culture is the most promised one, I would say I see a lot of emerging companies going open in down the line in maybe couple of years. And on India, the ecosystem, I would say, is totally growing, not matured as such. But again, we have a lot of promising projects like Hasura, Hopscotch, we have Chatwood, all these companies are doing wonderful things. And hopefully we will be, having a tremendous change in the way our society sees the open source culture, and the guys who are working on it to have a relevant position when compared to the regular guys who doesn't have an edge on open source. So yeah, it's going pretty straightforward, but again, it takes time. So watch and see. That's it.
Yeah, that's true. One more fact, like companies hire people to develop something for GitLab. Like they want features before GitLab releases it. That's how culture
Yeah.
is all about. So, I feel that AI is some sort of a boom at the end of the day, but there is always that one reason that we give to ourselves, like how can we contribute more? So what is it all about when you're talking about a world that is filled with jargons like AI and deep learning? How can it leverage open source? Because I'm not running any sort of an famous open source project, but I just have some set of data sets thrown out to the world on YouTube, and I have some annotations done. Kind of a thing. But like when you see an open source data set, they are pretty huge amount. So what's your view about how can open source be leveraged in the world of deep learning and AI that we are desiring to build for the tomorrow's world?
Well, that's an interesting question, because the most biggest AI project that we have ever seen, either the GPT-3 or the Open Network, or even the Open CV, they all are open source projects. Like they are not just some open source project, but open source projects with lot of followers, like millions of followers. So I would say it would be totally cool if every contribution to the all these jargon words like AI, deep learning, machine learning, all comes under one umbrella, which can be open source, or some foundations like Mozilla and all, undertaking the development, not just the development but also the research, the everything that need to mature the space. Because if you take any specific stream in AI, whether it's deep learning or machine learning or reinforcement, at the moment there are like a lot of guys doing a lot of stuff, but it's not concentrated under an umbrella. And it would be totally cool if there was a centralized system that would accommodate all these streams to a specific use cases, so that the open source community can leverage it. And again, it's totally give and back system. Like us developers are contributing to it, we are leveraging the part, the general public is leveraging the AI streams. And systems like GDP3 and OpenCV, they have like billions of rows of machine learned algorithms, which will optimally give the perfect answer for your question. So I'm totally down to it. And again, being an open source enthusiast, I always look forward to all these new trends happening in the AI world. Maybe after a couple of years, who knows, we will be using AI within our daily lives, our smartphones, our daily gadgets. They might turn to an AI program and all. So yeah, it's all underlying the open source culture and the community behind it. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you have a project called as Hopscotch, and that has undergone a lot of automation as well. Like you can't really
Yeah.
sit and every time when you have a pull request, you can't just pull that to your local repository and just do some sort of a command where there is an exe file or like a sort of an application generator. We have automated all of these. I always say this: DevOps is a sexy looking Linux command. It's just that one piece of code that does all the magic. It's like you need to use your brain at the end of the day. Can't help that. You need to use your brain, but it's one time investment, long time goal is being set for you. So, what does DevOps look to you today when you see an immense amount of open source contribution happening here? Hundreds of developers come back to you and they start contributing at one given point, and there are many folks, many stars, that's the level of automation that is required. I think GitHub is rocking the world. By the way, GitHub is phenomenal in terms of that. So what is it all about when you are considering DevOps as one definition and looking at the scale in which open source happens? What does DevOps look to you today?
Well, at Hopscotch, we extensively use the best usages of DevOps within our company. As you said, it's not totally cool if you have someone sit at home making all the changes manually and all. So we use DevOps extensively. We have a lot of integrated tooling within our pipelines that will, basically automate a lot of stuff. It's not just about the public facing stuff, but again, a lot of internal stuff are automated in a way that it requires the minimal manual intervention when you handle code, when you handle any tech or software projects. And especially in Hopscotch, we use tools like CI/CD applications within our pipelines that will, basically whenever a guy or whenever we get some contributions from the community, we will run through the test, we build the product, we host it on a deploy server, we test it with our current production branch, and we make sure that the branch is totally working and is okay to be merged with the main branch so that it will go to production. So this whole process might take 8 to 10 minutes considering the workload of the system. But if it's something that I have to do manually, it might take 2 to 3 hours for me to do that. So that's why we have DevOps in place, which will, get the commits, run the product, test the, do the test, make sure that it works, give a notification on our Slack saying it's totally works, and it's okay to merge with a branch. And at the end of the day, after a couple of minutes, we say to the DevOps team that it's okay to be merged, and yeah, it gets live on our production. So what actually happens is Hopscotch right now has more than 25,000 plus monthly active users. So if something wrong happens to our production site, it is being affected to thousands of users in couple of hours. So we can't allow that to happen, which why we have strict DevOps configurations on not just our production, but also to our staging and beta service as well. And yeah, in an open source point of view, we are really migrating our code to a infrastructure kind of thing. We have Terraform and a lot of Grafana instance in our place. We are hoping to use them extensively, because being an open source project, the telemetry part is very essential. We have to know what we are dealing with. We have to get a hold of the data that we are dealing with. So we have Grafana and HashiCorp's Terraform in our place to transform the way we code at the moment. So it's basically, again, a lot of them are traditional. Like we have a GitHub repository, we push the code to our public branch, we do the pipelines there, we have some automated actions, and at the end of the day we get the result. So our next phase would be to see the Hopscotch as a code infrastructure that can be hosted on any cloud. Just pull it from a Docker image, run it on a local server, and after development, again push it to the cloud. Our Jenkins or Travis build the project and deploy to our production. So the process that I would take 2 or 3 hours to do is now getting done by 2 to 8 minutes by our DevOps configurations. And what I'm saying is, if everything goes right, maybe down the line in 6 to 8 months, it might take 2 to 5 seconds max. So the progress that we are seeing in the DevOps is phenomenal. I'm all eyes into it. And at Hopscotch, we always follow the best practices, the latest trends, and moving the Hopscotch code to an infrastructure is something that is undergoing. And yeah, that's how we are approaching the DevOps in open source infra?
That's the beauty of open source. You get to see an immense code base, which is like phenomenally difficult to understand at once. Like you should
Right.
know what happened from the first cursor which was blinking to the last PR that you just pushed on. Like it's always that, we all still have that rollback mechanism. We all still have what can be done. And like lately, when I realized the fact that it's at the scale deployment, at the scale infrastructure being taken care into the consideration, I feel open open source can really set the gold standard for the tomorrow's benchmarks that we are thinking about. Like biggest one, Kubernetes has really set that benchmark. And like if you take Amazon does 11.6 seconds one build happens, and I'm like, what? 11.6 seconds, and where are they working? It's from different teams, different topologies. Oh god, man, that's awesome. So your point of view in the way in which current world is viewing and perceiving technology, because right now I think probably there's a lot of misconception this is happening. Like we are moving towards the DevSecOps, but like didn't the old folks do the DevSecOps? They still did security. They still did a lot of, like, if you ask the other folks, like, what was the pain that went behind it? They always say that, it was all bash script, it's automated. You need not have to do everything in hand. Like you put this tag, that tag. I'm like, a simple bash script can really do that. But like we just go fancy for that, and we just make sure that we have the developer advocate from that company help a team here and so on. So what is it all about when you think about perceiving tech in terms of a developer and a consumer's perspective? Because like a lot of times, when open source comes into the picture, there is always that governance part which will hinder us from saying that, hey, there might be something fishy happening here. I'm like, then why did you come to the project page? So it's always that. So what is your thought in the way in which we are perceiving tech as a consumer and as a developer?
Well, the views are always changing, and it should be like for being a general consumer, and considering a geographical location such as India, again there is a wide spectrum of users, consumers, who perceive things very differently when compared to one another. But on a general perspective, I would say that nowadays every company is basically a tech company. Like this has been happening for a while. It traditionally every company used to be a hardware company, and right now every company is a tech company. They all had a software part in their stack, and they always have a developer team within their company to do all the software aspects of the company. So as I said, this again kind of transforms to our way the employment is transforming, the way our finances is transforming, and at the end of the day, I would say the way our general consumers perceive technology has been changing over the years. Right now we have a lot of opportunities in the tech space, and it's not just about the careers and jobs descriptions and all, but the way we interact with the tech with our daily life has changed over the past decade a lot. Like my father and my mother, they never had a smartphone throughout their life, and after a couple of years they started using it, and right now they can't live without it. Like the first thing my dad would do is he will check the WhatsApp status, and do an Instagram post and that kind of stuff. But because the thing is, like, they never had a clutch on how to interact with all these tech gadgets couple of years ago, but right now it's something that has been a prominent part of their life. So from a general consumer's viewpoint, it's already changing, and we can expect a lot of interesting things to happen in tech, because all the funny things like AR, VR, or all this happening around, and we will see more immersive and interactive interaction from the tech in the general consumers. And on a developer's point of view, well, it's all about being changed, like, getting updated with the latest tech. Because I started my career in a jQuery vanilla JavaScript stack, and if I choose to stay on that stack, I surely will get outdated pretty soon. And so it takes a lot of effort and courage from developers side to you know basically delete everything that they have studied for the past decade and learn something new, very new, like JavaScript frameworks like React, or any text like blockchain or NFT. So it's always changing, and it's pretty good. Like the new beginners can learn all the new stuff. They get this vast opportunity in the tech space. They can land on a 1 million per year dollar job, or it's always new, because they have this enthusiasm, curiosity to keep updated with the latest trends. And if you are not getting updated with the latest trends, you might get fall down and miss a lot of opportunities in the tech industry. So as a developer, as a programmer in this, I would say to get updated with the latest trends happening around the tech world, because that is where the money is, that is where the tech is going forward. So yeah, get the latest updates. And right now it's everything free, right? You have tons of immense of resources to learn everything for free. We have YouTube, we have Stack Overflow, we have Google. So learning is not the hard part, but the interest to learn is the hardest part, I would say.
That's true. Truly, that really makes a lot of sense, because a lot of times when I look at a new stack, it's like very new to me. It's like, if you say me, I have been a Python guy for a very long time. If you say me shift to Java for a while and just start doing Spring Boot, I'm like, what can I do in Spring Boot? But when I start comparing it with the Flask project or Django project, and I start working with the Spring, that's where the catch really comes in. That's where you really appreciate the fact that yes, there is a different layers of software abstraction that is going behind. So now, are we architecting the right way? Because software has defined everything. You guess what? Kai Weiner, the guy who is in the Confluence team, the Kafka, he literally wrote an article saying that when not to use Kafka. It's the best thing that can really happen when a guy comes out from the same company and says when not to use it. So are we architecting the right way? Because now, as soon as we hear something new in the market, we want it in our architecture. So my point might be different because their requirements might be different, but it depends on one project to the other. But like, I just wanted to ask you this one question, like, are we architecting the right way using the present open source software infrastructure that we have? Are we really architecting the right way?
Well, this sounds funny because a couple of weeks ago, I actually talked to Neha from Confluence, and what she mentioned is that the current way of architecting a new project is really messed up, because right now we have a lot of choices to make. Like even if you take the front end part, we have like hundreds of frameworks in any given languages. If you take the backend part, we have hundreds of frameworks to choose the stack between the framework. So but this was not the case couple of years back. Like there were handful of frameworks to choose from, there were handful of languages to choose from. But nowadays we have a lot of choices, and it kind of made the initial decision part a little bit messy, because again there is always this intervention from the shiny new tech stacks like AI, machine learning, blockchain, all this stuff. Because the developers at one point are pretty much confused on what to choose, what would be the outcome be, what could be the struggles that we have to do before even choosing a framework. So it's kind of a messy way that our current tech stack is. But again, freedom is choices. So when we have choices, we have the enough freedom to decide what would be the best choice for us. As I said, if you have a senior member in your team, I would give the right for choosing that frameworks to him, because he obviously has a lot of experience from me, and hopefully they will make the better choices. And also I'm a total newbie. Like, I only graduated in 2019 only, and I have been to the industry for the past 5+ years, but I always listen to guys who has been in the industry for more than 10 or 20 years for exceptional decision choices. Like, I truly believe that one mind true sorry I truly believe that three mind is better than one, five mind is better than two. And I always listen to my seniors on choosing the system architect for everything new what we do and at Hopscotch. So yeah, again, it's kind of like a muscle memory that you have to build while choosing the decisions for your stack. And right now it's kind of a messy thing, but always there will be a better team member who can make a better decision depending on your requirements, and not to follow all the tech jargons that we are getting nowadays, because a lot of things are happening at the moment. And finding the best practices will always work.
No, Neha Narkade, she was in LinkedIn before. It
Mhm.
was in a PubSub model, and then they went to the stream model. It's that ultimate transition that gave rise to Kafka, and that transition really led to the Confluence. And now Confluence is rocking the world. Oh God, trust me, they're rocking the world in terms of Audi uses Kafka. You can't really deny the fact that Audi is really using Kafka today. You know, based on all these experiences, right? That sort of an experience to be packed up. That really takes a lot and lot of patience to draw a conclusion towards. So now, speaking of an IT transformation that everybody wants in their company, like agile, 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 scrum, scrum, scrum. Oh, this, oh, that. I'm like, what? Like, I've seen companies where they don't raise any Jira tickets. It's an ML based company. So you can't, it's all about probability that you're playing with. And you can't really go on and say that I'm going to give you 2 days, get me an algorithm, get me a data set. I'm like, what? Give me a proper data set, or else give me a choice of an algorithm. There are decisions which is just going behind. There is no Jira ticket raised, nothing much. It's just deadlines which is just given to them. Even if you deliver the project a second before that deadline, completely fine. Or else even later, that's true. But what can you deliver and what can they learn from it? Some culture is so good. So what do you feel about the IT transformation trend that always happens in a company? And like, when should organizations try to unlearn some things and relearn some things? Because there's always a reason behind that. Like, you have to deny the fact that you are the best person in the room, and you have to listen to every person. So what is it all about when we are thinking about an IT transformation today? Because when I go to
Well,
some companies and some meeting, they want ML, even though there is no requirement of an ML there. So what is
uh,
IT transformation according to you?
so this is totally subjective. Like, this is totally depending, and this might change from one company to the other, because throughout my career I have worked with firms like Buy Me a Coffee, which is basically a team of 5 members shipping a product to 500,000 plus users. So it's basically like 5 members doing everything in a company, and shipping excellent product without any agile or scrum, or we didn't even had a task list or a Kanban board or anything like that. We just sit at our home or our workplace. We have a laptop, we code. At the end of the day, we make a feature, we ship that. Next morning we have testers working on it, and we ensure the quality of the feature. And in 1 or 2 weeks we might ship a dozen plus feature without any all these jargons and all. And it was a team collaborative effort. So yeah, it totally depends on the way the hierarchy of the company is distributed. Like, if it's a client based company, or if it a company which has like more than 5,000 plus employees, I would say there is a definite need of proper hierarchy and monitor within the employees. But if it's a smaller company with 5 or 7 employees, they don't basically need all these fancy items, and they just need to build the product, find the market fit, and ship the features. That's all they need on their initial days. And hopefully when they scale the product to millions of users, obviously that will require all the best practices for a workplace. And I believe that's the only time you need to care about all those skills. And when we are free, enjoy the freedom, enjoy the agility, enjoy the adrenaline, and ship all the productive features with or without the monitoring from the top hierarchy. That has been my take throughout my career. At Hopscotch, we do that. Like at Hopscotch, we don't have a assigned task. I work at support. I work with the testing team. I work with the front end part, and front end guys work with the back end guys. They all of them write tests. They are always communicate with the quality assurance, and we always have one agenda, which is to make the best product, whatever the technology we are using and whatever the methodologies we are following. But at the end of the day, we want the best product, best features to ship. And on a larger scale, yes, we have seen a lot of transformation. We have adopted to a lot of Western policies in larger teams. But again, it's always subjective to the requirements of the firm, not something that I would say mandatory for everyone to follow, because in a way that it's actually kind of like a multitasking and degrading your performance when compared where there is no rule set to follow and all. So yeah, that's my take on it, and that's what we do at Hopscotch.
That's the best transformation that you can do. It's like less jargons, more of the hard work. Like you need to be that
Exactly.
one person who can not behave like you can deliver everything, but yet push your team to be like, it's something like you want your team to be the next big culture that you really want to say to the world as a story that, hey, here we are as a folks, team of some 5, 6, 10 who just evolved to be a monsters in the industry on one day. And I think that's the best transformation that you can get to your team. I talk with a lot of people. I've been evangelizing a lot of operations, and trust me, open source is one of the best examples that I give to them. I give the example of TensorFlow, PyTorch, and other platforms, and I'm like, what? I'm like, yes, it's the reality that I'm talking about. It's like, it's an entire code base which is there, and every researcher and everybody in the industry is using it. And that's the best part about it. And I think, Liyas, thank you so much for such great insights, bro. It was like, it's not talking about to an youngster. Oh, forget the fact. You are actually good enough to be a 40-year-old guy. Trust me, 40-year-old guy. But it was an honor talking to you, brother. It was an honor talking to you. And of course, I would love to call you as a guest on my community, the Azure Developer community. Please do come. It would be an honor to have you on there as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It's great for having me, and would love to spend a lot of time talking to newbies and beginners in the space. Would love to narrate the way we have to make the best tech companies from India, because we have a lot of talented folks who didn't have the opportunity to shine, but hopefully together we can become a part of it and bring out a change. So totally down to it. Do call me. That's all.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you